Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie, and here we are. Got rid of that image. And I've got a topic I'm going to talk about today, which I think is absolutely fascinating. I ran into this at World Travel Market. Actually, I'll credit Marianne Evans, who's a member of the British Guild of Travel Writers, who said, "Oh, you must go down to the Burgundy stand because there's this amazing project going on down there." So it wasn't a stumble on; it was actually as a result of her, and I in turn told lots of people. But on the stand was Sarah Preston, who is I've forgotten your title now. It's your International Digital something or other, aren't you, Sarah? For Guédelon.
Lots of hats at Guédelon.
Yes, international. Here I got your card here. International Press Community Manager. There you go. And you're actually based out there, and it is in essence an extraordinary archaeological project to which the public are invited. And essentially, they are building a medieval castle from scratch using medieval techniques, if I can put it that way, and tools and so on. So let me just introduce the panel before I get Sarah to explain exactly what is happening down there. With us we've got Michael Young. Michael is, as you know, is one of my regular we double head a lot of episodes of the Travel Coffee Break. So Mike's here really as a participant and a co-questioner because he's fascinated as I am. And we've also got Thomas Dowson, who is an archaeology blogger. And is always interested in this kind of stuff, and hasn't yet been to Guédelon. So there you go. That'll be something exciting for him when it actually comes round. Meanwhile, in the middle there, we've got Sarah Preston, and Sarah joins us from Guédelon itself. We were going to do a pop-up hangout at the World Travel Market, and we got everything lined up, and I was tweeting it out, and we were all ready to go, and could we get the Wi-Fi to work at the appropriate moment? Could we help? So we ran back up to the press office where it's supposed to work up there, and it wasn't working up there. It was hopeless. Next day I did another pop-up from the Canada stand. It worked absolutely fine. So there you go. But we thought what we'd do is we'd do it instead this week. So, Sarah, just take us through exactly, I'm not sure if I've described it adequately, what Guédelon is.
Well, basically, Guédelon is experimental archaeology on a massive scale. The idea is to build in order to better understand the different tools, techniques, and the problems that were faced by medieval castle builders or equally cathedral builders and such like. But it has another strand to its story, and the other strand is job creation and the boosting of the local economy. And Marilyn, who is the director of the project, that was her initial motivation for getting involved. She wanted to create a project which was going to give a long-term future to the people working in that area. So there are different strands to the story, but what we'll concentrate today on, I think, is the archaeological side. So we are building the type of castle that would have been built. It's not an existing model, it's the type of castle and the type of characteristics found in a castle built in the French kingdom in the late 12th, early 13th century. And our project is planned to last somewhere in the region of 25 years, although the figure of 25 years was always an act of provocation in some ways. We had no real idea about how long it would last. This is our 17th year of construction, and we are followed by a team of archaeologists and art historians who are there to advise us, but are also there now in our 17th year to visit and to collect data, to observe, and to use Guédelon in some ways as a training ground for their work.
And where exactly is it? It's in. I described it as Burgundy. In fact, I can probably help here because I do. I can, in a sense, answer my own question because I've got a map here. Here's a Google map that I'm sharing with you now. I hope everybody see that there.
Yeah. There we are.
Yes. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, we are 2 hours south of Paris, basically.
Perfect. And
surrounded by forests. We're between two very small villages. We really are in the backwoods of northern Burgundy.
Excellent. And if I move across to here, just so people can get a sense of this. I'm just going now to the to your website, the Guédelon website, trying to get to the home page because I was on there. Where's it gone? That'll probably do it. People can get now a bit of a sense of I'll stop that of what it's all about. In fact, what I better do, why don't I go here? Can you see these pictures I'm showing now? This is the Flickr page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, Sarah, you take us through, because now people can actually see what we're talking about. It's built in a quarry, and literally from scratch. I mean, you cleared out the quarry. Whose land is it from?
It was an abandoned quarry. When we purchased it back in '96, it was a quarry that had been abandoned since the 1950s. In terms of modern development, it was practically worthless, but for us it was a gold mine, because in this quarry we had the largest deposit of sandstone in this particular area. So that gives us more than enough sandstone for the construction of the castle walls and towers. But equally it provides us with sand, which we use in the mortar. There is oak in the surrounding woodlands, we have water, and we have clay. So we bought this land and 11 hectares around it back in the mid-late 90s, and that still is owned by a non-profit making association which still exists and is still the owner of this land. But since the year 2006, a private company was set up, headed by Marilyn and Michel, the co-founders of the project, and they now manage the site.
It is an extraordinary site, and interesting that you should say, because it did need to be picked. I imagine in exactly the same way that had I been a lord, a duke, a count, back then in the 12th, 13th century, I would have been doing anyway. I mean, I'd have been looking for somewhere that I could site a castle that would have exactly those things, would have water, would have wood readily available, would have sand, all that kind of stuff, yes?
Absolutely, it's that old location, and obviously for a castle isn't just a military structure. Castles were also economic powerhouses, seats of social power. So although in terms of finding a place that was easily defendable, that was one issue, but it was only one of many different issues. And for a castle like this, obviously having the materials nearby was going to bring building costs down considerably. And you mentioned being a duke, a lord, or a count, and interestingly, we had to decide at the beginning of the project on the social status of our fictional lord. So although he's a completely fictional character, it's important to decide what his social standing was, and we've decided that he's quite a modest, low-ranking nobleman, and so as a result, this isn't a royal castle, and that factor will be reflected in certain architectural choices that we make.
Such as, not just scale, presumably.
Not just scales. This is when we talk about this being a small castle, it's not so much in the amount of land, its actual kind of footprint. It's in terms of the amount of dressed stone, for example, that you'll find. If we go back and have a look at the Flickr page, you'll notice that the vast majority of the stonework that we're using is rubble stone. So there's nothing derogatory about the term rubble. Most ancient buildings were built using rubble stone. It's just that this stone has been quarried, roughly shaped, and taken directly to the masons who then build with it. If you look at a royal castle or a cathedral, then every stone will be beautifully dressed. So that's a reflection of the social standing and the budget involved in the construction of any building.
So here, for example, I don't know if you can see this wall that I'm showing.
This is all coursed rubble.
Yeah, yeah. And that would have been much smoother and much more glamorous if I'd been royalty.
Yes, if we were to look at the medieval Louvre, the remains of the medieval Louvre can still be visited in the courtyard under the pyramid. And there, every stone has been taken to a stonemason's lodge and has been dressed. And that's a reflection of the status of the person building the castle. That's an amazing photograph.
Yes, that is, isn't it? It's very dramatic.
I've not seen that. Wow.
Just thinking back to again our fictional character, would he have found it easy to get A, the quantity of labour that he needed for this, and B, the calibre?
It's a good question. Certainly, in this part of the world, we were quite backwards. We're backwards now, and it was backwards then. Obviously, there was a huge amount of construction going on in the early 13th century. Cathedrals, churches, abbeys, etc. So there was a skilled labour force out there, and certainly in some ways this is the beginning, very beginning of the end of feudal structure in some ways, because you start having a class of people who can move around, who have a skill which is transferable and desirable, and can go from site to site and make demands when it comes to working conditions. We have records which record workforces going on strike, for example, because they're given too much fish to eat.
Oh right, okay. Thomas, is this your kind of era?
Well, on archaeology travel, I write about anything. But personally, from my own background, I'm much more prehistoric. But one of the things that interests me now is the way in which you have this amazing project, as Sarah outlined. It's not just a great archaeological project that's aiding our understanding of medieval castle building techniques, but it's a community archaeology project, and community archaeology is a big thing around the world now. Where the community basically are getting involved. So I think what's so great about this place is you've got two things coming together: the experimental archaeology side of things and the community archaeology. So it's performing more functions than most other, if not all other, examples of this kind around the world. I think other places are going to follow this model, don't you think, Sarah?
I think there's a real model to be copied here. I mean, obviously, it's a model. Guédelon in itself, I don't think, can be replicated, because the whole point is it's the story of a particular place, of a particular group of people, and the particular materials that we're using. And obviously, that has shaped our whole experience. If you were to take this model and apply it even in the south of France, it would be a different story. But I think the model is there. It's captured people's imagination, and what I hope it does is that it gives people a language, a code, if you like, to then go and visit genuine historic monuments, be able to read them, understand them, and appreciate them. And that's one of our great aims.
That's a very good point. Mike and I were talking when we were at World Travel Market about it, and reflecting on how one of the great things about it is that it's not instant. I mean, for a generation of children and adults like me who've grown up in a world where, frankly, you can throw the Shard up in London in a matter of months. I don't know how long it was, 24 months or something like that. This is a project which, you started in 1997. That's when the quarry was bare and ready to go, and you set the foundations. And here we are, 2014, and we're not even anywhere near complete yet.
No, the scale is quite unique, isn't it? And it's interesting because I think, if anything now, our job is easy. We're building a chapel this year. We get to tell a story about a window. The great challenge was for the founders in those first 4 to 5 years, when they were literally building walls and having to explain to visitors what they would be able to see, what would be in place one day, and also to keep the motivation up in the team to make them believe that they were castle builders. And I don't think that reality really sank in until we tackled the first rib vault in 2001. That was when the change came, I think, in our perception of ourselves, and also the perception of the wider world to what we were doing.
Another thing that makes this such a great example is, or quite a unique example of its kind in archaeology and tourism, is, as you said, it's going to last about 25 years. In most other examples, and if you think back to probably the most recent high-profile one, the Neolithic village that was constructed at Stonehenge, I mean, they constructed that village using traditional techniques as well, but they had that up and running when the new visitor centre was open. Whereas at Guédelon, people are going back year after year and seeing something ongoing. It's an ongoing project, and I think that is quite unique as well. I'm not sure of another project that does that.
because it does. When every time I look at a, sorry, go on.
No, it's just, it was interesting because when the BBC crew came out, because the big problem, television companies have approached us over the years, but they want a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they want it in a very short space of time. And obviously, we're looking at years and years of work. And when the BBC crew first arrived, I think they were thinking in terms of tackling a chapel, the building of a chapel or a tower, and suddenly they realised that actually the story of one stone, the story of any single stone, is of significance. And so they scaled things right down to, so the first episode will follow a step, but in one step you have the work on the tracing floor, you have all the quarrying work, the dressing skills, the transportation. So the story of the whole is in the story of one stone, and that's what we're so lucky to do, is that we can talk about process day in and day out, and there's no part of the process which is less interesting or less important than the rest.
Yeah. One question I have is, right now everyone's looking at it from a stone point, from walls and stones and chapels and windows, but obviously putting together a residence of this sort requires also at a later stage a lot of soft things like furnishings, like wall drapes and things of this nature, or wall tapestries. Is that also part of the project, these softer things, as the project progresses?
I think inevitably, yes, they will become more and more part of the project. At the moment, we're very much in the main building process. Although we have finished the building of the actual North Range, which is the building that houses the Great Hall. So we have started the process of rendering some of the walls and painting some. There may be some, I think on the Flickr page I saw some pictures of pigment. So certainly interior decoration has become an issue. The fact that the walls weren't bare stone, the fact that they were covered, the fact that they were colourful and bright has become an issue. In terms of textiles, I imagine that's something that will creep into the story a little bit later.
I mean, because, starting it at this stage, obviously it would make sense to think about stones and think about hard things, or trying to what the construction guild would call drying it in. In other words, build a structure that's free from rain. But at some point, when people would build these in the 12th century, they had all these other skills involved in putting in, whether it was woodworking, whether it was the tapestries, whether, all of these soft things that would require, I guess, a larger array of specialized people to work on these items.
I think the only limitation to our project is energy and time. The energy which is consumed in the building process is just enormous. So yeah, I mean, the potential to have a whole range of different workshops in the forest is clearly there. It's just a question of managing and making it happen and having priorities. So certainly we do have a whole range of other trades around. So we have a rope maker on site, but that's linked to the need to have ropes which we use in hoisting, or in transport, or in protecting the stones. We have the tile makers who make both the floor and the roof tiles. We also have obviously the carpenters, and it was interesting you said that we're talking a lot about stone, but in the next couple of seasons wood is going to become a big issue again, as it was when we were building the roof timbers, because the big issue that we have ahead of us is the building of the pepper pot roof timbers. So we need now, we're in the process in fact of visiting different castles looking for models, then we need to go off to forests to find suitable wood, which isn't always that easy because modern forests are so different from medieval forests. And it's interesting because I know that the big vision that that Marilyn has for the next coming years is the creation of a whole area which will be just about wood and woodwork.
And also taking you back to, sorry, Thomas, I wanted to go back to the question of the visitors. You were talking earlier on about how when you started out, you weren't really sure what you'd got, and with visitors arriving, there was very little to show them. I'm guessing you must have had a model or something that you could show them and say, well, this is what it will be like in years to come. But of course, you were starting literally from scratch, because you had to build the tools that you were going to use to build the castle to start with. So saw pits and horse and cart, for example. I don't know if you made the carts, but you had to really start from scratch, and there would have been nothing. But you've had visitors right from the word go. And what I think is fascinating is that now you have a lot of visitors. I think you said to me 300,000 per annum now coming to the site.
In an 8-month period.
And so open from March through to November, I think, is the is the time. And when they come, what they get is an archaeological project. It's not a living museum. I mean, you notice from the photographs that everybody's wearing medievalish costume, but they're not about to start talking to you in medieval French,
No.
and they're not doing, it's not like a living museum where they interact with you in character. They're actually there to get on with the work. And furthermore, I noticed that there's a note about how you can't, there aren't any sort of scheduled demonstrations of, I don't know, rope making, for example. It's as the job demands. If you happen to turn up on a day when they are making some rope, then they'll tell you what they're doing. But that's it, isn't it?
I think what makes Guédelon very different, and as a visitor, for the visitor experience, there is an element in which you have to also give of yourself. You are visiting a construction site, so there is no one day that will be the same, and it's important to take that into account, and it's important to take the time that's necessary, because you could easily walk past the forge and the blacksmith's not there, and that's for a very good reason, because he's sealing a lead joint in the castle, and he'll be back. So it's having the confidence to stick with the process and understand that this is dynamic and it's moving, and to kind of accept that and to really give it time. And it's something that we're always working on, getting that balance between the visitor experience, because obviously that's important. The visitors fund this project. Without them, this project cannot exist. So ensuring that there's a good visitor experience, but equally ensuring that this is a genuine project, because people realise very quickly when it's not genuine.
You did say to me that one of the great blessings was that you had an understanding local council, in that you weren't burdened with particularly onerous health and safety legislation. People don't have to wear high-vis jackets when they're working on the site, and you don't have to, put up big constructions to keep people safe and away from any kind of danger. Basically, if you're working in an area, they'll just stretch a rope across, and that's enough, and everybody will honour that.
Yeah, no, I think we were talking, weren't we, at the WTM about the fact that we've been very fortunate. We're in an area of France which has been very supportive of the project. I don't know that we would necessarily been able to do this project in another part of France, but the local authorities were very keen to work with us. 17 years later, we have an excellent safety record, so obviously that gives them the confidence to continue working with us. Clearly, health and safety is an issue. It's the biggest dossier that we have to manage, beyond a doubt. But we've managed, I think, to find a very good compromise where we can work safely without taking away from the experience that people have when they come. So we do have steel toe cap shoes. We do wear protective eyewear. When we work sandstone, we wear masks to protect the workers from the dust that can provoke silicosis. When we're under the scaffolding, we have hard hats. The scaffolding is heavily reinforced compared to a medieval model. If I was clever now, I could show you a picture of medieval scaffolding and compare it to what we have. But just to give you an idea, we're using wood, we're using putt logs, which are the horizontal beams that you insert into the stonework, but we have additional braces, we use modern bolts to connect them all. So we've made compromises, but they're compromises which we are more than happy to live with, more than happy.
And when visitors come, they get more than just what we see in the photographs, the central castle itself. It's quite a large estate, isn't it? And there's quite a lot going on around it.
Well, we've got the actual castle area with the quarry and the stonemasons working, but then we have the forest area in which we have the woodcutters, the tile makers, the spinners and the weavers. But this year we've opened a new part of the site. This is a working hydraulic flour mill, which, along with INRAP, which is the French National Institute for Preventative Archaeology, a group of archaeologists from INRAP found the remains of 2 flour mills in Jura, in the east of France, and working with that team, we have built a model of a late 12th century flour mill. So visitors can now make their way down a path and see that in operation. So people often ask, well, what are you going to do when the castle's finished? And obviously for us, as we've been saying, process is what we're interested in. So by having these other projects pop up around the castle, that gives us an opportunity to keep the story going.
So you're selling medieval baguette?
Soon we can make medieval boule, because the word boulanger comes from the fact that bakers used to make boule of bread, round rolls of bread. So we have the flour, we have the grain, we have the mill, we have the flour, we have a baker, we have a bread oven, so we can make bread on site now. We're not selling it as yet. That will come.
Excellent. And what does it cost if somebody wants to visit? How much do you charge for them to park?
Charge €12 for an adult, €10 for a child, and that allows you free entrance throughout the day. You can come in and off site for the whole of the day. And for people who live locally, we also sell a special entrance fee, which allows them to. It's twice the amount of a normal ticket, but it allows you to come back as many times as you like in the season. So for €12, you've got a whole day in the 13th century.
Wow.
I think
Do you have an idea of how many people are coming back year after year after year, given that you're interested in the process?
It's from the research that we've done, it would seem that visitors come back on average between every 2 and 3 years.
Oh, great. So that's working then.
It's working well. Yeah, it's a working model, and there's something about this project, and our master mason likes to say that it's a Republican project, in that at Guédelon you don't hear about a long line of lords and ladies and their exploits. This is the story of working men and women and how they built the built heritage that we still have today. So I think there is a sense of people feeling a real connection with the castle. There's also a sense of having watched it grow. We have people coming back with their children year on and taking photos showing how the children have grown alongside the castle. So there is a sense of personal investment and ownership, which people are entitled to feel because they are funding this project.
Mm.
There will be children who perhaps were taken when they were young, back in the 90s, who will be adults and taking their own children when it's complete, which again goes along with what Mike and I were talking about that concept of things taking a long time. If you were working on a cathedral in medieval days, the chances are that your great-grandfather had been working on it before you, and you probably won't see it completed anyway in your lifetime as well. So
We've had our first child visitor who came as a child and said, "I want to be a carpenter," went away and trained, and now has come back to work. So that's a nice story.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
That is pretty cool.
Guys, go on.
Well, that's another thing, which is the heritage skills aspect of this, which we've kind of touched on. That obviously we're talking about built heritage and not wanting people to appreciate the heritage that we have around us, because pretty much every French village has a 13th century church or chapel in it. But it's also about appreciating the skills that were needed to build these monuments and to put real value on manual skill and manual labour. And one of our builders said in an interview not so long ago, this is the only place where people applaud builders. And I think that's really important, especially in the current climate within the education system, where people are certainly in France very much encouraged not to go down the manual road. It's seen as somehow lesser than the academic path, and that celebrating these skills and showing them to be the skills that they are, and explaining to people that before anyone on site starts working with their hands, they have to work with their heads, and putting real value on those skills. That's again another strand to our story.
So the craftsmen are the stars of the show.
Definitely.
You mentioned earlier the BBC. Tell us about that.
Well, the BBC approached us a while ago. This is the team that made the Victorian Farm series, Victorian Farm, Wartime Farm, etc. And they asked if they could come. They said they were changing precinct and they wanted to do something slightly different, and asked if they could film us for a season with their presenters. So there's Ruth Goodman, Peter Ginn and Tom Pinfold. So we accepted. Cautiously at first, because it was quite difficult to kind of hand our baby over to another crew. you know, the potential for that to be difficult was very high, let's face it. A British television crew working with a French construction team, and I'm proud to say that it's just been an absolute joy for all of us. Not only am I really proud of the result that they've achieved in terms of television, I'm really proud on a human level of the way in which we've all managed to work together with mutual respect and with tolerance. I'm so proud of that. And the first episode goes out next Tuesday the 18th, 9 p.m. on BBC Two. I'm very excited to see the results.
Excellent. A remarkable example of European cooperation.
A remarkable example of what Europeans can do together, indeed.
Cross-channel cooperation.
Which of course mirrors what was happening in the Middle Ages when teams of masons were travelling from site to site, and there was this cross-pollination of skills and knowledge, and we need to celebrate and remember that yeah, definitely we're better working together for sure.
As long as we're not talking about the 100 Years' War.
As long as we're not talking about what?
The 100 Years' War.
Oh yeah, let's gloss over that bit.
Guys, do you have any other questions for Sarah? I'll take that as a no. Okay. In that case, I think what we'll do is we'll leave it here. I don't want to flog it to death. That's a really good note to end on anyway. The European cooperation. And thank you all for being a part of it. We're going to really look forward to seeing the series on telly. Did you say next week it starts?
Yeah.
Tuesday the 18th.
Yeah.
Well, obviously I'll be in touch with all of you, and yeah, if we can, Mike, we're going to test BlaBlaCar. That's a plan.
Yes, I definitely, yeah, I'd love to be involved with that when you test it, because I think that would be great to document how well that works and to put something together on that. So
definitely, I will be in touch. But thank you for inviting me today, and yeah, I'll be in touch really soon.
Okay, good to see you. Everybody, we're going to, as I say, finish it there, but we will be back next week at the usual time. Probably Mike and I, maybe Mike, it's about time for one of your little travel shows, your little presentations. But we'll sort that out between now and then and let you know what's happening. Usual time, 5 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon GMT. That's 6 o'clock in Europe. And over there on the other side of the Atlantic, it'll be noon on the East Coast and 9 in the morning on the West Coast. So do join us then. In the meantime, from us, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.